Previously on Photaru.
I've also gone out of my way to talk about the seasons for 2023 and 2024. In fact, I also intend to do it for 2025.
Told you. Now, I want to make one thing very clear. I've not watched every single anime that's come out this year, so my opinion is very subjective. Now, without wasting a lot of your time, let's get into the video.
You know, when I first started watching anime from the winter season, I thought it was going to be mid. Then I realized that there are some bangers. No, not you. Starting off, I would say that one of the highlights of this season was Blue Box, alongside another anime I will talk about later in this video. I simply love the relationship between Chinatsu and Taiki. One thing about media I often hate a lot of the time is when drama feels forced and makes no sense within romance anime, and it feels like cheap thrills. One example of this is another anime I watched recently from this season actually, called Anyway I'm Falling in Love With You, where all the childhood friends fall in love with the main girl. I feel like a lot of this forced drama often comes from the harem genre, but I digress. With Blue Box, the question was always when was Taiki and Chinatsu going to get together, rather than if it was going to happen. Because from the get-go, it's pretty obvious that Chinatsu was the motivation for Taiki to better himself as a person to become a part of her life, which is evident from the opening Saraba, which is probably one of the most underrated openings of the year, because here's a reenactment of my reaction the first time I heard it. Yeah, this is already better than the first opening. Oh look, is that Hina obviously getting rejected within the opening? Listen, I get liking Hina as a character, but if you genuinely thought she was gonna win between the two girls, you're delusional. Taiki only ever viewed her as a friend, and to me, it's a good way of building drama without forcing the entire world to fall in love with one person. Okay, now let's talk about the anime where the entire world falls in love with one person. The 100 Girlfriends That Really Love You is about 100 girlfriends that I wish would say loved me. Besides you, and oh my god! Originally, I'll admit, I thought this anime was just gooner bait. But because I felt like I didn't have anything else to watch, I decided to give it a fair shot, and it's peak. This show was something that felt oddly nostalgic, you know, all the way back to when I was first watching Love is War and getting into anime for the first time, which for me is a very big compliment. So I decided to search up this mangaka and I found out that he is a fellow Akasaka glazer!
I think I'm starting to find my people.
Now, I'll admit, some of the choices for the girls are very questionable, but there's also a MILF. The biggest strength to 100 Girlfriends is how it has a ginormous cast that is ever expanding, and yet every character feels like they have a personality and doesn't get left behind the more the story goes on, which is just a testament to how amazing the writing of the show is. Like, sure, maybe the mystery of the One Piece is cool and all, but I'm ready for the 100 Girlfriend to be revealed in 10 years. But you want to know something that's not a strong example of character writing? Let's just get over this quick. I don't care for solo leveling.
Okay, bye.
No! When I first started watching solo leveling, I was pleasantly surprised. I was actually interested in watching the story because there were some highlights of season 1 that I really enjoyed. But then going to season 2, it was a disappointment. Mainly because every S and A rank started to stand for suck ass. Not only that, but the one time the show tried to be emotional, the story moved on way too fast for it to leave any impact. I don't really know how people feel about solo leveling nowadays because I don't really see people talking about it, but it wasn't something that I would continue watching if a season 3 came out. There were a few other things I watched this season, but I did end up dropping a lot of different shows. One I did end up watching fully was Honey Lemon Soda, which was honestly an anime where the summary of it sounds better than the actual execution of the show. It's about a sheltered girl who starts to live a life with her friend group and all that jazz. It's just that it feels like a lot of the emotions felt here go by way too fast, and it doesn't feel realistic in any type of way. I mean, I didn't dislike it that much. I thought it was an okay show, but it sounds like other people have stronger opinions about it, which understandable. There was also Apothecary Diaries and Sakamoto Days, but I feel like I'd rather save that for later on in the video. Oh look, it's later. Alright, time to move on to spring, and what other way to start off than with the anime that has taken the entire community by storm. Apothecary Diaries is a very interesting show, where the intricate layers of the different palaces lure you in, with one of the best protagonists in modern anime, and for how well executed this anime is, I wish I could care for it more. Apothecary Diaries has taken over the anime scene, and I understand why. The execution of the character writing as well as the story progression really lures you into the world of Apothecary Diaries. Unless you're me.
Loser! Me?
You see, for me personally, I've never exactly sought out world building in pieces of media. That being said, I do really respect Apothecary Diaries and all it does, and the fact that it stays true to its own character writing without having to conform to what fans may have to say about it, even if it doesn't attract every single audience. Now, there is one thing I want to mention. Apothecary Diaries is like the father that went to go to the grocery store and actually did come back with the milk, because every single year it has had 12 episodes at least. As well as other collaborations with Universal, an original movie written by the author, which totally doesn't make me jealous. Apothecary Diaries' popularity only grows more by the year. And overall, I'm happy that a lot of people have found some joy out of this anime and that it's built a community of its own. Unless you're a Jinshi fan, please click off this video. The only thing I don't want people to do is criticize other anime fans because they don't enjoy slower paced shows, because at the end of the day, Apothecary Diaries is not for everyone. Maybe people enjoy more balance between action and dialogue, like in To Be Hero X, where there's a vast amount of characters and how there are so many moving pieces that come together to form one big story. I think I'm gonna talk about To Be Hero X. I still remember when the concept trailer for To Be Hero X dropped, and it seemed like something that wasn't gonna come out for a long time. Well, long time was this year, and it was crazy, and it did not disappoint either. I found myself falling in love with the first arc of the show more than anything else the show had to offer, but there was still a lot. And with the rest of the arcs, viewers could still find some other story to possibly enjoy. I did also really like the balance between 3D and 2D animation, although they did just abandon that after the Lucky Cyan arc for story reasons, but eventually I did adjust to the 2D art style, so it didn't really affect my watch experience. A comparison I did see with To Be Hero X was that it was like an animated version of The Boys, which is kind of true. You see, when I show a scene of To Be Hero X, I don't have to censor it, so YouTube doesn't come after my ass. The similarities lie within the theming of the show, where the masses are what fuel what we deem as celebrities. Some want to use it for good, some want to use it for evil, and others couldn't care less. I also want to give a shout out to the voice actor of Nice, Mauricio Ortiz Segura, because when I was comparing the English and Japanese version of To Be Hero X before I ultimately decided which one I was going to go with, his voice performance for Lin Ling / Nice was absolutely incredible and immediately convinced me that I was going to go with the English dub of To Be Hero X. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the future you end up hearing his voice a lot more. The next anime I want to talk about is Witch Watch. You see, I knew nothing about this anime besides Yaotsubi was making the opening, and I fell in love with it instantly. The way new spells were introduced, it reminded me a lot of Saihike, which is one of my top 5 anime of all time. But it still had its own sense of identity with its own romance, as well as own jokes, like how there was an anime within an anime that was 7 minutes of the actual episode's runtime, and for the sake of rewatchability isn't exactly my favorite thing, but hey, we got a new opening and ending out of it. But the main thing that really stood out to me was the connection between Nico and Morihito. They are probably one of the most underrated couples in anime. You see, at the beginning of the anime, it's established that they knew each other as childhood friends, but as time's gone on, Nico obviously had a crush that's lasted a really long time, and the way she shows this love is by thinking of new spells as an act of service to repay him for all he's done for her. And it's not like Morihito is a slouch either. He always voices how he feels about Nico being very important to him. And I feel like that's such a nice connection to have with someone else, and it makes it feel so natural. And eventually when they do get together, I'm going to pop off. Now, one thing I want to mention before I end up moving on is that I think spring probably had the best selection of anime openings this year, but we'll get into that later on in the video as we move on to summer. With the fall video I posted before, I did spend a decent chunk of it talking about summer anime, but it was really basic stuff, so I'm gonna try and talk about what I didn't already mention before.
Like the chaotic mess known as Detectives These Days Are Crazy, where an anime girl takes down the mafia with the flamethrower in the first episode.
Now, I wouldn't go out of my way to call this show a masterpiece, but it's still worth watching. Instead of chasing perfection, it's always important to seek some form of a fun experience, which is what this anime is. Next is the summer Hikaru died, and even though it's a mystery anime, it's also the closest thing I've watched to boy love, which I'm fine with because I'm an absolutely inclusive fellow. But I haven't really had the motivation to continue it. Wait, am I actually homophobic?
But I spent a whole minute making this sign.
Anyway, the thriller aspects of Hikaru is something that hasn't unconsensually grabbed me from the balls, but something that did grab my attention was the release of Takopi's Original Sin, as it became one of the highlights of original animes that were released this year. Now, as all the happiest scenes from this anime play for you, I'm going to talk about how the end of the 3rd episode is genuinely the most a chill has gone down my spine from all the anime I've ever watched. Now, one thing I want to point out before I end up moving on to the next season is the popularity of cores within anime. An example of this would be Sakamoto Days, which is an anime that originally came out in winter but is now airing in summer. And I actually like the concept of cores. It allows animes to be produced more consistently without sacrificing any quality, like T-Bait, which is an anime I completely forgot to mention in the spring section, which is kind of crazy. Now, with Sakamoto Days itself, it did feel a bit episodic with how it would introduce new characters that didn't really feel all that important.
But with the end of the 2nd part, I feel like tensions are really starting to rise, which makes me excited.
Okay, we can talk about Fall now. Now, since the release of my last video, my opinions on Fall hasn't really changed that much. Demon Slayer and Chainsaw Man mainly carried all the momentum Fall had, but even then that's a stretch because in Japan it came out during the summertime. But even then, the best thing to come out of this season was Tatsuki Fujimoto's 17 through 26 one-shot collection, where it was a bunch of different stories written by him from the age of 17 to 26. Which, honestly, if you're trying to introduce someone into anime, I would recommend that you show them this because it really shows how crazy anime can be, but how deep it can also get at times. Now, when a new season starts, I try to watch at least one romance anime, and in this case, it ended up being Yano-kun's Ordinary Days. Originally, it felt like one of those gimmick animes where the main character just gets hurt, but, you know, it still is that, but it has some interesting things about it, like how the main guy has a cheat sheet to romance anime, and it actually works. But if you want to talk about a seasonal release that isn't some type of special, then we have Gachi Akuta, which was originally a summer release. God damn it! Now, my favorite episodes from Gachi Akuta were all the episodes involving Amo, who, for context, is a sex traffic victim. When you first meet her, Amo comes off as this really sadistic girl. But then, the more you watch, the more layers start to peel back as we see her past and the way she justifies her actions in her head. Not only that, but after the confrontation, we also get some character development from Rudo as well. And it was a really great arc that aired during the summer season. Okay, but in all seriousness, it's not like the momentum for the show has slowed down. It's continuously gotten better with these next batch of episodes, and it definitely is the highlight of the fall season. And I'm glad that's the case because I really do love the style and character designs of Gachi Akuta. And while looking up the characters for this video, I ended up finding an entire website that's dedicated to that is official. So if you're a fan, enjoy that. Now we can finally get onto the rankings of everything. Starting in last, yeah, it's no surprise. Listen, fall wasn't exactly a great season, and because of that, I didn't watch a lot of these episodes weekly, and everything I did watch from the season was either a movie, the OVAs, which were technically the 17 through 26, and all the other seasonal animes just got left behind, and when I did catch up to them, I didn't really feel like I was watching them weekly, so I didn't get attached to any of these shows that much. Next and third, we have Winter. Overall, the anime I watched in winter just didn't do it for me. In fact, Younger and Dumber Me wrote off 100 Girlfriends as a gooner anime, but gave it a chance because I thought the season was boring. And even though I have to give credit where credit's due because Apothecary, Diaries, and Solo Leveling were big drops, there was a lot of mediocre romance anime, and I probably dropped the most amount of anime from this season. In second place is Spring. Although comparatively I watched less anime than Winter, Spring had more anime that I watched consistently and enjoyed, such as To Be Hero X and Witch Watch, plus Windbreaker came out with another season that continued its amazing and underrated fight sequences. We also had the release of My Hero Vigilantes, which was a very good spin-off and was on par with the themes of My Hero's original season. Not only that, but it also had my favorite catalog of anime openings such as Watch Me from Witch Watch, the To Be Hero X opening, and another amazing Apothecary Diaries opening with Opening 4, and most importantly, the second opening to Shoushimin, which is my favorite opening of the year. First should come as no surprise, as summer was the return of many fan favorites, and I could understand if maybe you weren't excited for season 2s of animes you didn't enjoy, but there was a lot of other animes to look forward to, such as Takopi's Original Sin, Fragrant Flowers Bloom with Dignity, And although I didn't care for it that much, I'm sure there were a lot of people that enjoyed the summer Hikaru died. And I mentioned this in the last video, but the fact that I even had to write down a list of anime I was watching this season showed how crazy it was. Now before I end the video, I want to give some bonus awards to some of the anime that came out this season. Starting off with the best new anime to come out this year being Witch Watch. Next is the award for my favorite continuing anime this year, which is The 100 Girlfriends That Really Love You. Next up for my favorite moment of this year, I have to give it to the reintroduction of Nice and To Be Hero X episode 19. You see, for me, I always wanted to see Nice's character because I felt like there was so much about him that was so interesting,
And after waiting literal months for that smirk, the payoff was worth it.
Next award is the weirdest coincidence, which in this case is 2 separate anime referencing SpongeBob. The first one being Detectives These Days Are Crazy, and the second one being Yano-kun's Ordinary Days. Now we move on to the next category, which were the best openings of each season. For winter, it was Apothecary Diaries opening 3. For spring, it was obviously Shoushimin. For summer, it was Sakamoto Days. And for fall, it was Iris Out from the Chainsaw Man movie. And finally, the best ending song. And I will warn you guys, I don't pay attention to endings as much, but here we go anyway. Starting off with winter, we have the ending for Honey Lemon Soda. Spring, we have the ending for To Be Hero X. Summer, we have the ending for Rascal.
And finally, My Hero's final season has the best ending of the fall season. But that's just my opinion. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you guys around next year when I do it all over again. Cue the new outro.